Okay, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to be learning how to play a blues fingerstyle that's perfect for those of you that maybe have never played fingerstyle. If you're trying to get into that and trying to understand how to do that, this would be a good lesson for that, because we're going to keep the thumb part, which is your bass. Your thumb is your bass player when you're playing fingerstyle. We're going to keep that incredibly simple. And when I first started learning how to play fingerstyle, I tried to play like Chet Atkins, and it was so difficult because your thumb is jumping around between strings, changing timing, and it was just really hard to do. This is not that. This is like this. It's that simple. Now we're going to be able to take that, and I'll show you how you can improvise on top of that, and you can create your own like little songs by yourself. It's like having your own bass player with you, or creating your own jam track on the fly. That's what it feels like. And so we're going to talk through all that as we break this lesson down, and by the end of this, you'll be able to do it. So in this video, we're going to talk through all the lesson material. If you'd like to get the extra materials that come with this lesson, the tab PDF file, and also access the on-screen tab viewer, which has the tab and the video on the screen at the same time. It's interactive. You can slow it down, loop it, and all of that. You can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP511. Okay, so we are in standard tuning, and you'll notice that a lot of blues songs are in the key of E or the key of A. And the reason for that is because of the open bass strings that you have. So if you're playing in the key of E, your 1 is on your 6th string, your 4 is on your 5th string. So you've already got 2 notes that are open. You don't have to fret them. That means I can react to that on the top 3 strings and play whatever I want. So hopefully a light bulb's going off for somebody out there, and you're starting to see that already. And then you come to your 5 chord, which you would play on your 2nd fret 5th string. And we'll talk about that, how your pinky is free to do some other things there. But basically, that's why that's popular. And if you're playing in the key of A, it's even better in some ways, because your 1 chord is your 5th string, your 4 chord is the 4th string, which is open, and then your 5 chord is the open 6th string. So they're all 3 opens. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is the sound that you need to be able to create to play that bass line. So it sounds like this. It's not like this. It's not ringing out. It's just a little thump sound like this. So what you do is you take this part of your hand, sort of where your wrist meets your palm, and you set it on the bottom 3 strings. Now I'm talking about the bottom in terms of notes, not vicinity. It's actually the strings that are closest to you, so the thickest strings. That's probably the best way to say it. But you're resting the palm of your hand right there, so that the top 3 strings are free to ring out, but the bottom 3 strings are muted. And that seemed really difficult to do when I first heard that. I thought, oh God, how am I going to position my hand like that and get it right or be accurate with it every time? But it's really not that hard at all. Within a minute or two, you can just sort of move your hand around and sort of feel what that feels like. Once you get that feeling, you'll be able to just do it quickly with your hand. Now, the one thing to pay attention to is where your hand is placed. You don't want to go too far forward or you'll totally mute the string. See, listen, if I'm up here, you can't hear anything, but as I go closer to the bridge, you can hear the note come out. So basically, you're trying to touch the bridge there. I mean, at least with this guitar, that's how I would do it, is just rest my hand on the bridge like that. Okay, so this is the first thing you want to do, is just play on the beat. So if we were counting something, we'll set a tempo about here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just try and get a sound going, just like this. On the 6th string, by the way, that's just the 6th. Now, you've got your top 3 strings open, meaning they're not muted. And what's cool about that is, if you think about what's going on here, you have a bass player now that's thumping an E note. That 6th string is your E note. So what can I play on top of that? Well, I can play any sort of E chord shape. So I could be thinking, I could be thinking about scales. I could be thinking about the minor pentatonic scale. And actually, that's where we're going to start, is minor pentatonic scale. So think about your minor pentatonic scale in 1st position down here. Right? That's what it would look like if you played the entire scale. But we're only going to be looking at the top 3 strings, because remember, we're muting those bottom 3 strings. Those bottom 3 strings are reserved for your bass stuff. And for the most part, when it comes to this kind of fingerstyle. So it makes it a little easier in a way. You have less variables to mess with. So if you've only got the top 3 strings, you've got that. Now, what can you do with just that, just the top, these 3 frets, using the top 3 strings and that E as your bass? I'm basically just playing the minor pentatonic scale with the thumb going in the bass, and hopefully a light bulb's going off for some of you out there where you start to see what's going on. It's not like you have to have somebody hand you a composition every time you want to do a fingerstyle. You can just start making music. Now I was jumping around between minor and major pentatonic, looking at some chord shapes, but it was played very slowly, and it's the stuff that you probably already know how to do a fair amount of. All right, so let's listen to the first phrase of this little blues composition, and then we'll break it down. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at. Now notice the first thing is it started with the thumb, and then it goes up to the first string. So they don't happen at the same time. There's a little bit of a stagger. Now this will be the hardest part of this, is trying to get the synchronization right. So it starts with I'll just call out the string number. So we're going to say 6 for the 6th string, 1 for the first string. So it's like this: 6, 1, and then back to 6, and then we're going to go 1, 2. Okay, so it's 6, 1, 6, 1, 2. So we'll do it real slow at first. Just try and get that. Don't go any further than that. Look at my thumb. It's 1, 2, 3, right on the beat. Now that is the hardest part of this whole thing. Once you can get that and just be able to loop that, the rest of this is going to kind of fall into place. It's actually not that difficult from here on out. So, now watch this. That's the next phrase. So it starts on that this next phrase starts on the 3rd fret, 2nd string. So notice that when I'm doing that, I am playing both the 6th string and the 2nd string at the same time. That's really the only place in this first phrase where that happens. So it's, and then back to 1, and then back to 6. So let's put those 2 pieces together. We have, remember, it starts with the bass. Let me try that again. Now, when I'm hitting that 3rd fret 1st string, I'm bending it a little bit. Just a little bit, pushing it sharp. And that's just one of those things that it has kind of a twang. You can sort of hear that in the blues quite a bit on that note. And what's going on there is you're going between that minor 3rd closer into the major 3rd. You're kind of pushing it. You don't want to go too far, but you're going that direction. Now the other thing that I find myself doing here is hitting this 2nd fret 2nd string. So it goes like that. Now that's not a note that would be in your minor pentatonic scale for E, but it would be in your major pentatonic scale. So it gives you that kind of clash of sounds where you hear the 2 notes. Now you don't have to do that every time, but I do hear myself doing that as I listen back. Now that's one of those things I didn't do consciously, but that was happening. Okay, so we have. Now notice that I came down and hit open 3rd string and then a hammer on with my index finger on the 1st fret 3rd string. And what I'm thinking about as I do that, this will make this easier, this little part, is just make an E chord and then hammer on your index finger. Right? So watch this. You'll see me make the E chord. See, my hand's in position for the E chord. And that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about that chord. I'm always thinking about chord shapes. That's kind of what I anchor everything to. If I'm playing something up here, I'm thinking about my E triads up here, right? Using the A shape. Okay, so backing up from the beginning, we have. Now we repeat it. This time I just hung out on that 3rd fret 2nd string. I didn't go back to the open 1 string. I just went and then did the little hammer on again, just out of your E chord. So when you put those two pieces together, back to that, back to the intro, and then kind of a Robert Johnson Delta blues kind of thing. And what I'm doing here is actually very easy to play. Let's break it down. So I've got my index finger on the 3rd fret 2nd string, middle finger's on the 4th fret 3rd string. So you have those two notes, and then you have the open 1 string. So all 3 fingers are on the first 3 strings, so you have that going on while you've got the bass line. So it's like this. So let me explain where these notes are coming from. They're coming from minor pentatonic, E minor pentatonic scale, but this would be pattern 2. Right up here, right? That's where those 2 notes are coming from. But then you throw in that open E, and you get this sound, which you hear in a lot of Delta blues. It's a lot of the Delta blues licks have that open E string droning out while something else is going on underneath it. That's probably the best way I can think to phrase that. So you have this kind of thing. You hear that? The E's ringing out each time. So now when we're playing this, you have synchronized, so the thumb and the 3 strings at the same time, and then the 3 strings on their own. And that's it. So you go synchronize, synchronize, synchronize. So every other one. So just practice that. Okay, so now the song is going to go to the 4 chord, and I went like this with my thumb. So it's the 6th string. We're going to slide with ring finger from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret on the 6th string. It's like a little bass line, just like a bass player would be sliding up to the 4 chord. And then we come up to the open 5th string. So now we can play a lot of those same licks, but all we're changing is the bass note. So are you with me? I mean, are you seeing the power of this? I just changed one thing with my thumb, but I can play a lot of those same licks because I'm staying in the key of the song. So what that means, I can just kind of keep repeating licks, and as long as they're sort of E minor pentatonic licks, and we're staying in the key of E, it's going to work. And that's what happens here. So that's how I played it. It's a little different. I just changed it up a little bit. So it's like this. And then we go back to the 3rd fret 1st string. And then the open 1st string. That's how I played that over the A part, the first melody line. So it's... All right, so this next line is like my favorite line in the whole thing. Check this out. And then we go back to the 1 chord. Isn't that cool? So what I'm doing is I'm sliding. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about we're staying over the A chord, right? Which is our 4 chord. I'm thinking about this shape. So my A chord up here using the E shape. And if we look at just the top 3 strings, you've got this little triad here, your A triad. And I'm sliding into it. So 5th fret to the 6th fret on the 3rd string, 5th fret 2nd string, and then I come up to the 7th fret 2nd string, slide up to the 8th fret. And when I do that, I'm thinking about my A7 chord, right? So I'm kind of hitting some of those chord tones. That would be, it's like an arpeggio. It's like an A7 arpeggio. So then I came up here and hit the 5th fret 1st string. So if we put it together, it's like this. And then we go backwards. and then open second string. So do that with the bass line, and it goes like this. And that's the lick that is played over that A chord. Now, I said I was staying in the key of the song. In that case, was I playing in the key of the song? Sort of, but I was also thinking about my A arpeggio and the things I can do over the A chord. You know, there's other things I could have done up in here, right? And then go back to the E. Whatever I want to do over the A part of the song, I can do there. I could have just stayed in the E minor pentatonic though. See, I could keep the A bass line going. And that would have worked as well. So let's back it up from the beginning of that A part. It goes like this. Now I can take my hand off the fretboard and come back down here into first position and play that same intro lick that we started with. And then I came up here and hit one of my favorite all-time licks. This is like I think of this as a Muddy Waters lick, but it works in everything. It goes like this. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking about pattern 4 of my minor pentatonic scale for E. So I'm thinking about this shape, right? And then I come up, so I hit 2 notes from that shape, string 1 and 2. 7th fret 1st string, 8th fret 2nd string. But then my pinky comes up and hits the 9th fret 1st string. Actually, I started with the 2nd string. And then I went. So that's 9th fret 1st string. Take that pinky off and then play string 1 and 2 behind that shape there. So you have. And then you take your hand off the fretboard and hit the open 1 string, open 2nd string, down to the 3rd fret 2nd string. So when you put it together, it goes like this. It's just such a fun little lick that you can kind of easily squeeze into something, and it sounds so good. So just remember that as being minor pentatonic scale pattern 4. You can connect it to your E minor chord shape like this, or you can think of your E major chord using the A shape, the top part of that. Whatever you can do chord-wise to be able to attach that lick to it. So however you can do that in your head to attach that lick to a chord shape. That's how I should have said it. That way you can use it in other keys and other instances. Now the song goes to the 5 chord, and I actually do have to fret this, unfortunately. So we're going to have to come up here to the 2nd fret, 5th string. That's going to tie our hand down to one position. So our licks are going to be limited to what we can reach in this area because we got to hit that 5th string, right? We could hit it up here if we wanted to play some other licks higher, but we're going to be playing it down here. And what I played goes like this. Now notice my hand is making the B7 chord. I'm just making the full chord. My thumb is hitting that 2nd fret 5th string, which is in the chord there. And my pinky's up here hitting the 3rd fret 2nd string. So it's the same lick, we're just playing it now on strings 2 and 3 as opposed to strings 1 and 2. Now I could have played it on strings 1 and 2. My pinky will reach. But I just thought I didn't want to repeat that like too much over every single chord. So I thought it sounded better to come down and play that for the 5 chord. And then the song goes back to the 4 chord and we go. And then it goes back to the 1. Now what I'm doing there is basically I'm hitting one note. Now I'm making the full A7 chord there, but I don't need it. I'm just hitting that 3rd fret 1st string. along with the open fifth string. So it's like this. So you could, the reason I was making that A7 chord is I might want to hit some of those other notes. It was probably what was going on subconsciously. I always position my fingers into those chord shapes. That way also, if you bump a string accidentally, which I do all the time, it's going to be one of the right notes because you've got the chord down. And then we go back to the one chord with our bass note. And then the closing lick goes like this. So this is the same. That's just strings 1 and 2. And then I came down here to the 2nd fret 3rd string. Back to my open 2nd string. And then open 3rd string, 1st fret 3rd string. So let's back it up and play that. We have. Notice my hand is making the E chord. So after that I hit the open 1 string. Let me do that again slowly. Watch this. And then to conclude that I went the old and many more. And so what I'm doing with that is I've got the E shape down. My pinky comes down to the 2nd fret 2nd string, and then up to the 3rd fret 2nd string, which is just an E7. So that final lick goes. Just pay attention to your thumb and make sure it's always on the beat. Never drop the beat with that. As long as you can keep that thumb going, you're good. I mean, that's half the battle. That's more than half the battle. It's just keeping the thumb on the beat. Now, when you're first learning how to do this stuff, you have to slow it way down and you have to find a little phrase and loop that phrase over and over again. That's totally normal. That's what everybody does to learn this. You don't ever just go into the whole song. It's like almost impossible at first. But you'll find that a lot of the stuff repeats itself. And like, so once you learn how to do this, you'll hear another blues song that'll have, and you're like, oh, I already knew that. I already learned that from another thing. And your fingers will kind of know what to do. But when you're first training them to do this, it is frustrating. It's patting your head and rubbing your stomach. It's that kind of coordination thing. But if you slow it down in loop sections, you'll be able to do this. All right, so be sure to go to activemelody.com and check out those extras if you want the tab that you can print off, or also access that on-screen tab viewer that doesn't have any of the talking. It's just me playing it with the tab on the screen. If you need that way of learning and as a refresher, you can get that by going to activemelody.com and then do a search for this lesson, which was EP511. All right, we'll see you next week for something new.